Hello, SMPS. Can everybody hear me? Someone wants to just write a comment to make sure that you can hear and see us. We're just going to give it one more minute just to get people some more time to log on, but welcome. And while you're waiting, I am going to initiate a poll if you want to take a few minutes to just participate in the poll, and we will go over the results at the end of the webinar. So hope everybody is doing well. I'm going to give it one more minute for people to join. We did have over 112 people register for today's webinar, and it looks like we have about half right now. But I do see you are participating in the poll. It's exciting to always see the results as they go up and go down. So thank you for your participation. I hope some of you were able to work from your patios or decks today. I wish my internet made it out there, or I would be hosting from in my backyard. Okay, great. Well, we're going to get started. I'll leave the poll up for a couple more minutes. So welcome. Thank you for joining us for SMPS Connecticut's webinar, Brochures in the Age of Web. I'm Nicole Peterson. I am the current SMPS Connecticut president, and I'm also the director of marketing for Flowtech. And I've missed presenting to you guys and introducing everybody. Most of you know that I have a new coworker, Roman, and luckily he was shipped off to a satellite office today, so we shouldn't have to worry about him. So we do have a couple breaks during the presentation today to address any questions that you have. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to use the comments bar to type in your questions. And there is a little circle to the right side of your comment once you've submitted it, that if you click it, it'll make the circle red with a Q through it, and that indicates that it's a question. So that will just help me identify if it's a question versus a comment. So feel free to put those in, and then we'll also have time at the end of the webinar to address questions as well. So I'm going to stop the poll now, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank some of our sponsors. So today's webinar sponsor is BVH Integrated Services. So we'd like to thank them for supporting us. They've actually been the webinar sponsor for all 4 of our Mechanics of Marketing webinars in the series, and this is our 4th and final in the series for Mechanics of Marketing. So thank you to BVH. And then I also want to take a minute to thank our annual sponsors. They've been with us since the beginning of September, beginning of the program year, and have helped support it, bring in great presenters, and help support some of our various initiatives. So thank you to our annual sponsors. Okay, now I am going to introduce today's presenter. She is Amy Graver, and we are so happy to have you, Amy. And we approached Amy to present on this topic because she just has an appreciation for the art of graphic design, and she knows the ins and outs. She knows all the tips and tricks, but more importantly, she knows how it directly affects our industry and can speak very, with her experience on the industry and how graphics relate to that. So just a little bit about Amy. She is the principal and creative director of Elements, and they are a marketing communications and graphic design agency, which they're celebrating over 20 years. So congratulations for that, Amy. And they specialize in helping AEC clients grow their businesses. Amy was named one of the top 50 designers in the nation to watch by Graphic Design USA magazine. She co-founded the Connecticut AIGA chapter and served on their executive board as its first vice president. She also served on the Connecticut Art Directors Club board for 9 years, and 2 as the president, so that's awesome. And she's also a very proud member of the Connecticut chapter of SMPS. Amy also wrote a book about graphic design, which many universities use as its standard, and it's called Best Practices for Graphic Designers, Grids, and Page Layouts. She's also had numerous national, international design awards, and her studio has been regularly featured in various publications. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, Amy, and thank you so much for being here to present on this topic.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, SMPS, for asking me to speak and for that very nice, warm welcome. It's hard to believe it's been 21 years, but when you love what you do, time flies. So today I've been asked to talk about brochures in the age of web. Print and digital are both things that I'm very passionate about. So I'm very happy you asked me to speak on this topic. So I'm gonna dive in. I'm gonna start my timer so I can stay on target here. Okay, so let's.
Don't worry, I'll keep you on track too.
Oh, well, thanks, Nicole. I appreciate that. Appreciate the help. So I threw this in here as our first slide just to say this is not a new conversation. I was asked in 2016 by Canvas Magazine, which is a marketing design magazine, to answer a question about, do I think that print is dying? Is it dead? Is it dying? And I very strongly, affirmatively said, no, there will always be a place for print. It's something that can't be replaced. When you hand someone a business card and you put that in their hand, that's something digital hasn't been able to replace for us. So this is a conversation I've been having for quite some time. And I put together a little timeline to show you how in the years that I've had my business, I started in 1999. When I first started in 1999, I was doing 90% print work and about 10% websites. So at that time in 99, if you can throw your memory back, not everyone had a website at that time. Websites were still relatively new on the scene. So not every business had one, which is hard to believe. I mean, now when we run across a business and they don't have a website, we say, what's wrong with you? Get on that. So then I just showed through time. I won't go through every one, but you can see how slowly, digital started emerging. Somewhere in here, social media started to rise up. I had one employee who was a copywriter work for me, and he very famously told me that we were wasting our time looking into that social media business, that it was just a flash in the pan and it was going to go away. So he didn't understand why we're spending so much time on it. And here we are in 2020 and everyone's on social media. So anyway, this is all just to say, if you can see from the first date to the last date, we've sort of flip-flopped where we are. We're mostly doing digital and web, but print has not died. And I don't think, though we're down to maybe about 10%, and again, this is just my personal experience in my shop, but though we're down to 10% print, I don't see it going any lower than that. If anything, I think print might start coming back. I don't think it'll ever go back to 90%, but I don't think that print's ever going to go away. So the next question is, do we need a brochure? Do you need a brochure for your business? So there's lots of reasons to have a brochure. Obviously, it's a great marketing tool. It provides an introduction to your company or your business, and is also a great leave behind after a meeting. It's a great piece to follow up with after a meeting. You can send it to them. And we look to brochures to give us sort of an even deeper peek into your company's philosophies, personalities, your work. We expect it to go a little bit deeper than maybe the information that we can find about you online. It can explain your areas of expertise, your areas of service. It expands your visibility. It's just another piece in your tool belt. So I would definitely say that a brochure is a good idea. So now the question is, do you want a digital brochure or a print brochure? Let's dive a little deeper into that. So one thing is, before I start on the pros and cons, that I wanted to say was, that quote, maybe I'll go back for a second, but an intelligently written, beautifully designed brochure can save just as much as one that isn't. So I'm sure we've all had the experience where someone handed us a business card. It was on thin paper, it wasn't well printed, and it was disappointing because it didn't speak to the level of the company or the person who was handing it to us. Same is true for a brochure. Okay, so I wanted to share with you my pros for print brochures and my pros for digital brochures, because they both have merits and I think they're worth just reviewing. So number one, retention. How we receive information, how we read, how we understand things is much easier with a printed piece. We don't tend to read very long blocks of copy or spend a lot of time reading information online. Not to say we don't, but it's not as common as when you have a printed piece in your hand. I'll give the example of when I get a catalog from a favorite store. I might make a mug of tea and sit down with the catalog and actually take the time to look through it. What's interesting, though, is you might take the time to look at the catalog and then go online to purchase, right? So, but you're getting that information, you're retaining more of the things that you read from a printed piece. Okay, next, longevity. So you can keep a printed piece longer. You also, I had a client, just give you a funny example. I sent out some pieces to a particular prospect of mine over a number of years. So once a year I would touch base with her and I'd send her a printed piece, be it a brochure or maybe it was a sample of something I had just done. So I really wanted to work with this particular prospect. I didn't hear from her until a couple years later. It was like 4 years. She called me into her office. I went into a meeting and she opened up her desk drawer and she pulled out my file and she had all my printed pieces. And I was waiting for the right opportunity, the right budget, the right time, whatever it was. And she, I took a picture of her holding, because it's so funny. And we worked together for years after that. But it does make an impact. People do hang on to your printed pieces. We don't really hang on to digital pieces. We see them and they're gone into the internet. And we have to do a little bit of work to get them back. Where did I see that? Okay, next. So drip marketing, the idea of multiplicity. So let me just explain this because it goes by both names. But so if you send out a direct mail, let's say you do a direct mail program and you get 2% return on that, that's pretty good. And then you, let's say you do an e-newsletter and you get 3% response rate from your e-newsletter, also great. And then you do a print ad and you get 2% response. The idea of multiplicity is you add those responses together. If that campaign is tied together and one is supporting the next, you have a total response from that campaign of 7%. So that's better than if you're independently doing a print ad, independently sending a postcard or a direct mail piece or a brochure, independently, doing something else. So you see the idea, it builds. So why not, and this is sort of heading towards what my point will be at the end, you'll see, but why not have those all interconnect, and a brochure fits into that multiplicity, that drip marketing. It's another piece that you can send out. And tangible. So I get a little personal, tangible. I like printed pieces. I like the visceral experience that I get when somebody puts a beautiful printed piece in my hand, the weight of the paper, the smell of the ink. Maybe it's because I'm a designer, but I know it's all of these things. And our expectation as the receiver of that printed piece is what I was saying, similarly to the business card, the level of that brochure should match the level of the person and the organization that's handing it to you. That's our expectation. That's our unspoken expectation, is you're going to put a brochure in my hand that is equal to the level of your company, with the images, with the words, with the quality of the paper and the print job. And that no one has been able to replace that digitally yet. Nobody said, I was blown away by your awesome digital brochure, like they would with a printed piece. Okay, impression. So what does it say about your agency? So everything I was just talking about says professionalism. It gives you instant credibility. So that's a way to speak about who you are without, you don't even have to be in front of them. If you mail them your piece, receiving it gives you instant credibility from that brochure, from the work inside and the way it's produced. And we're comfortable and familiar with printed pieces. So that's part of it too. Everyone is comfortable and familiar with having a brochure put in their hand. Next, I want to go over the pros of digital brochures. So we have just as many pros with digital. So let's dive into
I just wanted to stop you to see if we had any questions, and we did have one come up.
Okay,
if anybody else has any questions, please type them in now. There is a little bit of a delay. So the question is, what makes a great brochure? And like, are there specific elements that every great brochure should have?
Yes. What makes a great brochure? So one is your messaging, and you have your mission statement, and that message and that mission should come through crystal clear in your piece. The other is great images, especially in a print piece because it's higher resolution. But I say your photography in general should be of the caliber of your work. It should be professional. It should look beautiful. It should wow people. Other parts of the brochure that are important, obviously, are your calls to action, which I'll mention later too, but people need to be told what to do, what the next step is. Don't be too soft there. Don't be too hard, but don't be too, mention it. Say what you'd like them to do. Would you like them to contact you? Make sure your contact information is in there. You could have a place for a business card or something like that. There's probably others, but off the top of my head, I just think beautiful images, well-written, clear mission, clear list of services, and call to action are off the top of my head. So thank you for that. That was a good question. Okay, so let's just dive now into the pros for a digital brochure, because there are. Of course, the first one that jumps to our mind is affordability. We all know digital printing hasn't been around forever. We used to have to offset. And I was laughing with Nicole when we spoke about this earlier, because I said I had a client who had a lot of printed brochures, and their salespeople would put them out on these racks, and people would walk into their showroom and they disappear. So they started hoarding and hiding. You would like lock them in their desk. We probably were laughing, but we've all done this. We've all so everyone didn't steal them or give them out. Well, with digital, you could do smaller quantities. It's a quick turnaround. A lot of advantages there. Flexibility. As you know, with digital, nothing. What do they say is that with print, it's written in stone or it's printed in ink. It's not digital. So if I spelled Nicole's name wrong, I could quickly go in and fix it before she found out. That sort of thing, right? Interactive. So we can embed into our digital brochure links, hyperlinks that could take us to maybe a services page or more information. Also, we could put a video embedded in there that they could hit play and watch a video. So lots of creative things you could think of there with interactive. Searchability. I love SEO. So one of the things I love about having a digital brochure is all the keywords that are in there. I also like that people can find you on the web searching for something that is in your brochure, be it a project name or keyword, company name, something like that. So there's searchability, even searchability within the brochure. So if you have a longer brochure, you can search within the document for keywords. Speed. So I did touch on this, which is, how quickly, we're out of brochures. We can probably get them in a day or two. We're offset printing. It was like, you're looking at 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So definitely speed is good. Unlimited content space. So in a printed piece, you can dive deeper because remember I said you had more focus. You have more of their attention, but with unlimited content space on digital, you can go longer, but there is that balance because even though you go on and have endless pages, they can't be too dense because we're not going to read all that. But you don't have to worry, like as you do in a printed piece, about budget and number of pages and the cost and those kinds of things. So sort of a balance there. I'm going
to stop you right here. We have a question. Sorry. This is a good one. So is it smart to send a printed piece when the client only asks for an electronic submission?
That is a good question. I think, I don't know all the particulars, but off the top of my head, I would say, then I would use my printed piece as a follow-up. So I would send them the digitals they requested. And maybe if I hadn't heard from them or, they're still thinking about it and they need a little nudge, you could pop the brochure in the mail with maybe on a piece of your letterhead, like a personal note saying, I thought you'd like this additional information, or, that you might like to take a look at our brochure. So in that instance, if they specifically ask for digital, then you still have the printed piece in your arsenal to use as a little follow-up or some other way to make contact with them. Very good question. Thank you. Okay, what's changed with digital printing? So, like I said, digital printing hasn't been on the scene forever. We had to do offset. I won't even go back and tell you how we first started. So I'm not going to date myself, although you could probably tell because I haven't been to the hair salon.
No,
so
you look great.
Thanks, Nicole. Right. But anyway, so we used to offset print, and now with digital printing, I just finalize my files. I push a button, it gets sent digitally to the printer. There's no longer all the steps involved for the printer. I won't get into it technically, but it's a lot faster. Also, what's changed with digital printing is when they first started, we were stuck with that digital printing paper. We probably all remember it was kind of shiny. We have so many paper options now, even processes. We still can't do everything we can do with printing, like we can't emboss and things like that. But there are a lot more processes now with digital printing than there used to be, such as varnishes, for example, that we didn't have before. So digital printing has really upped their game. And now it's pretty difficult to tell if something was digitally printed as opposed to offset, where before it was very easy. The paper was a dead giveaway alone, but the print quality was always, and now it's, if you get a good digital printer, it's very hard to tell the difference. And delivery. So again, we can just email, if Nicole called me and said, can I have your brochure? I could send it to her in seconds. You kind of lose that personal interaction though. With a printed piece, it is nice for me to meet with Nicole and put the brochure in her hand and have that conversation there and have her reaction to it, and that sort of personal interaction, which you don't get when I just email it. I don't know if she's looked at it or if she's still at her desk or what's going on. So you do have efficiency and convenience, but you do lose a little bit on the personal side, because even if I mailed it to you, there's still that personal, it's being sent just to you, Nicole. So it's fun when you get the mail and there's a big envelope, you pull my brochure out and I have a little note in there. It still has a personal touch to it. The digital can't replace. Can online and offline content be presented the same way? So I have 3 points here that I want. Is there any other questions? Should I keep going?
No, you can keep going.
Okay. three things here. So one is design. So first and foremost is when you're designing either one, digital or print, following brand standards, obviously, they should look like they're sisters, related to each other. Your digital brochure and your print brochure shouldn't look wildly different than your other materials. So you still want to adhere to the same things, but you have to take into consideration that they're both different platforms. So when you're designing for digital, for example, there might be more constraints maybe in size. I know with images, it's different resolutions. We don't need it as high when it's digital, those kinds of things. So you have to just be aware, that's a whole other topic, but you just have to be aware that there are differences, but they should look related. They shouldn't be wildly different from each other. They should stick to your brand guidelines. And there are some fancy things with digital printing they can do, like personalization, but those feel kind of salesy to me. You're putting Nicole's name on there and that's how it printed out. That just feels a little too salesy, but those options are there. I mean, I would use those in a very sparse way. For example, if I'm doing holiday cards for my company, I could get the envelopes digitally printed with everybody's name on it. I could give them a list and then they could print the names on it. Could not do that with offset. Every one of those names would be a separate plate. And, just would not happen. So things like that. Delivery, content. The content shouldn't just be rinse and repeat content, but again, they should be related. So you should have your main points in there, but again, you shouldn't dive as deeply on your digital brochure. It's more visual. So online we're more visual. Print, we still want it to look beautiful, and it can be visual. It should be visual, but you can have a little bit more copy. You can go a little bit deeper into it because you're going to have their focus and attention. And then the last one is mindset. So when someone opens your brochure, usually, like I gave the example with the catalog, they're focused on looking at your brochure. You have their attention for that time that they're looking at it. When you send someone a digital brochure, they're at their desk. They might be getting pinged. Emails might be coming in. Pop-ups might be happening. Different things draw their attention. So the mindset is different. So I would pay attention to that and think about how to stay engaged with both audiences. What is going, just get into their head and think about when they're reading this, what's their mindset, and when they're looking at it on screen, what's their mindset, and just think about that when you go to design your piece. Okay, throwing some statistics at you, but basically most of these statistics support print, which just say that, it's just all to say that print isn't dead. As I said in the beginning, I don't think print's ever going away. I think people prefer to read brochures, prefer paper for certain things. I think digital is convenient. I think digital is wonderful. I don't know how we got along without ordering things online and so on and so forth. People do their homework. People go on websites. If I'm considering a firm, I'm going to go look at their work online. I am going to find out as much as I can. But it's also nice to get some printed material from that company or that person. It hasn't gone away. So we could look at the statistics, but basically I'm just saying there's still a lot of support for print. There's still a very strong reason for having print in your marketing toolbox, if you will. So it is really a symbiotic relationship. So one supports the other. A print brochure can direct people to go to your website, for example. You can have that call to action. You could do a hashtag social media campaign and support that in your print materials. So you could send me a brochure and you have the hashtag in there, or you say, go check out our Instagram account and so forth. So you can support your online community with your print materials. And the reverse is true. So in a digital piece, you can say, opt in to get our brochure, so I can say on your website, yes, please send me some printed materials. And it's nice to introduce one audience to the other. So for example, if you get a client testimonial, it's great to put that up on social media. If you get a testimonial online, it's great to put that in your printed piece. So you're introducing one audience to the other. They really can support each other in a beautiful way. Let's see. I have a quote here. I took an excerpt of this quote. It was much longer, but it's from Annie Blau at Time Inc., who is basically saying that print is great for establishing your brand and your worthiness, which is what I was talking about, your credibility, your worthiness in the marketplace. But also, there's a place for your brand, in digital. There's a place for both of them, which is going to be the point in my conclusion, which we're heading towards here. So what I want to say in conclusion is that there was hopefully a common thread theme, which is I don't see it as print versus digital. I see it as print and digital. I think that organizations should have both. I think there's a place for both and a use for both. I think the most powerful campaigns are what we call omni-channel, which is just a fancy way of saying what I was referring to with the multiplicity. Omni-channel is using multiple platforms in your campaign. So what I would recommend is you think ahead of time about your marketing campaign for the year or next couple of years, and think about the customer's journey. Walk through your prospect's journey. Think about all the different touch points that you have with them, and which place does digital make sense and which place does print make sense. and have them right from the beginning supporting one another. So putting things in your print pieces that support your online activities and your website, and have things in your digital that support your print, or use them as follow-up. So let's say you make a connection from something you're doing online. Somebody reaches out on your website, for example. It would be great then to say, hey, Nicole, I saw you had some interest in getting more information on our services. I've included this print piece that speaks more about the services you're interested in. Here's our work in this area, and that sort of thing. So it's really a great way to capture both audiences and have a stronger campaign overall. I think they work beautifully together if it's thought through in the beginning. So that's it. That's pretty much my advice on print and digital, and your brochures. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So I do have a few examples I could start talking about. Unless there's already a question, I can just start sharing some examples.
There is one question, and we'll, if anybody else has more questions, start typing in. I'm going to ask Amy the question, and then she's going to start going through some examples. How often is, what's the rule of thumb with updating a brochure? Like, if there's nothing really new, if you haven't taken on any more product lines or included any more services, like how often should you be updating or refreshing either a print or digital brochure?
That's a great question. And I think it varies from company to company. I think that when you have that next body of work that you've done, or you started working in an area that you've been trying to break into, and now you have some examples in that area, or let's say you just got a whole lot of beautiful photography done, if there's some reason that's going to up your game, you should redo your brochure. Don't keep handing out a brochure that's dated, that shows the work that you had been doing, because we're always hopefully moving forward as companies and we're growing. So I would say, yes, every time you're growing and you're moving forward, or you're moving in a different area, and that's the area you want to go into, update your brochure. So excellent question.
We have a couple more questions.
Okay, good.
So they say people aren't readers anymore, and that succinct messaging is key. Assuming this is true, can you suggest a good length of a brochure for a firm profile and capabilities?
Okay. Well, they do say people aren't readers anymore, but there are some of us that are readers. I think our attention span has just splintered all over the place. I mean, we've slowed down during this pandemic, obviously, but I think in our normal, when we go back to whatever our normal is, we don't have a lot of time. Our time is always being pulled this way and that. So let me think, what was the other part of your question?
What's a good length
for
the firm profile and capabilities?
I'm not sure that there is a rule of thumb about the length. I think that it is showing your best work, and making sure that you get all of your services in there, the critical information in there. In a print piece, the length might be determined by the cost, because obviously, and you have to go up in a brochure, they're folded, however your piece is, but sometimes you have to go up by 4 pages if you're going to add, right? You have to add like another signature to the piece. So sometimes the length is determined by the budget. If you're not determined by the budget, I would say, put in your best work, and don't put in something unless that is, well, we really want to move into the area of education, and doing those types of projects, and we only have, this one shot, then yes, put that in, because that's where you want to grow to. But I wouldn't say there was a rule of thumb. I would just say, edit it carefully so that it's your best. Okay.
We have a few more questions.
Okay.
So this one is, I guess it's pertaining to like the sustainability aspect of print, like leftovers and people throwing out print materials wasteful. So like, do you have any advice on how to make it more sustainable or combat that issue?
That's a great question. There's different things that we can do. One is printing smaller quantities, which with digital we can. I think there was a lot more waste with offset printing because it's cheaper per piece, right? So if you print 5 brochures, each brochure costs $100. If you print 100 brochures, every brochure was, $5. I'm making up numbers, but you know what I'm saying. The more we printed, sometimes we made decisions on quantity based on per piece cost. So we ended up with cartons and cartons of brochures that then became dated and we tossed them. And with digital, we don't need to do that. I would say print less in smaller quantities than print more. But I'm always very interested in sustainability. So I would say just keep your numbers low, knowing that you can turn around quickly and order more if needed. And that's one of the good things about digital printing. And then look at your paper that they're using. Make sure it's a sustainable, recycled paper. So, and you can even put that on your piece, printed with soy ink, recycled paper, those kinds of things. So there are things you can talk to your printer about to make it more sustainable as well.
Great. So we're going to do 2 more questions and then you can get into some of the examples, Amy, because we still have time. I'm loving these questions, people, so keep them coming.
Yes, I do too. They're great. Thank you.
So the next question is, how many brochures are too many brochures? Is it best to have specialty brochures focused on a single service or market? Sorry, I didn't read that as a question.
That's also a great question. I do have an example that I show addressing a solution I came up with for one of my clients that addresses that very question, which was that they had sell sheets for different products. So they're a product-based company, which I'll show you. But that solution was for each one of the product lines that they had a sell sheet for it. We did have an overall corporate brochure that said, here's the range of our products, but if you're interested in that specific thing, here's a lot more information. So, as an architectural firm or something like that, you could say, here's the type of industries that we specialize in as an overall corporate brochure piece, which should be, your 10,000 foot view. If someone reaches out and says, but I'm building a school, then you could send them, here's all that work that we've done, either digitally as, just tear sheets or as its own brochure piece. Again, that's up to the company. It would depend on your, positioning, your branding, how much material, how many examples you had and that sort of thing. But, how many brochures is too many? When they become outdated and you still have a bunch, I think is not where you want to be. So I would say that would be too many. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my answer. smaller quantities that you can reorder.
Nice. So we have another question that's about an example. So then after that, we'll get into the examples and then there's a couple more questions that we can get after some of the examples. So this question says, my sales cycle is very quick, not a long funnel. I liked what you said about digital brochures helping SEO. Do you have an example of this?
Do I have an example of a brochure that helps with SEO?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I think any of the work that I've done with brochures where then we had a digital version that we then put onto the website is then, helping with keyword searches and things like that. One thing I would say though is, and we can, we're happy to do that. Like we create a brochure and then we put that brochure onto the website that people can download. However, even better is if you wanted to create what I would love to do is create the brochure and then have different information, different version on the website. Just being aware of your keywords. I mean, that comes into play with the copywriting. So understanding what your keywords are and having those on that digital version. You know, on the print, it doesn't matter as much unless, again, you're using that print version to put onto your website. But if you're creating a digital brochure just for digital use, you need to be more conscientious of your keywords and the things that, and I always give the advice of don't use the words that you're familiar with. You know, we all have our own industry words that, right, that we use. You have to think about what your prospects are going to search for. So I might call something, you know, a brand standards guide, and you might call it a logo book or something like that, you know, so I have to think of like, what would my, you know, people who are looking for me call it? So, you know, that's a good exercise to go through before you even start writing the copy for your piece, is to generate a keyword list.
That's a good idea. So Amy, let's get into some examples and then we can answer more questions at the end.
SEO is a whole other
webinar.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. But so here's a couple examples I put up here. I gave you some examples of work that we've done that I thought added to this conversation because it had something interesting about it to share. This piece was for Chimenti Construction. And they used this. It was a request. First of all, they need a corporate brochure, but this was really driven by their HR department, who did a lot of recruiting fairs. And they wanted a piece that was showed how exciting it was to come work at Chimenti, of course, but also their chief concern was, you know, we print a brochure and we have benefits this year, and next year our benefits package changes, right? We all know that. How do we keep these, you know, current? We don't want to hand out the wrong brochure. We've had problems where that's happened. So the solution that I came up with was in the back of this piece, which unfortunately we didn't photograph the back of it, but it has a pocket folder, and we created a template for them that they can use in Word, and it's a half sheet. And they can print them off their printer, and they use the same template, so it's branded. It looks just like the rest of the materials, and same fonts and everything as the header, and they can just put in, you know, this year's benefits package. And then there's a slot on the pocket folder that they could put a business card on there. So it became a great recruitment piece for them, and they could print a lot more of them, and just, you know, at the fairs they hand out so many, so they were constantly printing them. So this way they could print larger quantities in this case, knowing that they could constantly update them as needed. Should I go to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this piece was for the Yale School of Nursing. This was very near and dear to me. My mother used to teach at the Yale School of Nursing, and they approached Elements to do a brochure for them that went to several different audiences. It has that, I don't know if you've ever felt the soft touch paper. It's really nice. I mean, you talk about a visceral experience. So you get this, we call this perfect bound, where you have that like nice spine on the side, because you have to have so many pages to hold the perfect, I'm getting into production thing, sorry. But anyway, you know, when you put this in your hand and it's that soft touch paper, it's got this die cut, it feels weighty in your hand, you smell the ink. I mean, this was a really beautiful piece they did. It's a collection. And it acts as a brochure. They sent it to deans of other nursing schools and colleges. They used it as a recruitment piece to send to high schools. They used it in a number of different ways. So that's something to think about too. How many different uses can your brochure have? And that's a good thing to think about in the start of your project, in addition to, you know, how will this slot into our marketing campaign for the year? Think about all the different ways. That was the customer journey I was talking about, all the different ways you could use this brochure. So if, you know, you can create a brochure that's just a corporate piece, and that's fine. But are there different ways you can use it? And does that mean just adding something else to it? Like I said, like the pocket folder in the back, and now all of a sudden it's also a recruitment piece or something like that. So that's nice to think about. This is just an inside spread of the same piece. And then this was the client I was talking about. So now I'll just to more fully explain what I was saying. So this was created for Connecticut Stone. So when I first started working with them and we did the rebranding, we repositioned them. When I first started working with them, their market was geared towards masons and contractors. They had a showroom, but the showroom was sort of weekend warriors. And as soon as Lowe's and Home Depot and that opened up, that sort of fell off, or people were coming in just sort of using them for information and then going over to Home Depot to buy what they needed, right? So when I started working with them, I noticed like your target audience is architects, high-end builders, interior designers, and we should be designing for them. So they wanted to create all of these spec sheets, sell sheets with all their different stones. So you see, those are the separate pages. I'm pointing like you can see. Those are the separate pieces, but the beautiful corporate brochure, which is sort of, here's all the different types of stone we can do. And then you come in and you say, I'm interested in, limestone. Here's the sell sheet for limestone with the specs, which is the things that the architects and the builders needed, but also the interior designers wanted to show their clients and so forth. Very expensive. They were putting them out and people were just grabbing, even if I wasn't interested in all these 12 different stones, I was grabbing them from the showroom floor. So we decided, I decided to I told them, buy all the salespeople on the floor an iPad, and we created digital sell sheets. So now what happens is you come in, you look at this, you say, I'm really interested in limestone. And when you're standing there with me, we can talk about the sell sheet, show you the specs, and I could say, let me email this to you. And I can just email it directly to you. So sustainability, we didn't have to print so many anymore. And we still had some printed ones, but way cut down on the cost. And it was convenient for the client. They loved it. So they could, you email it to them and, they go home and they can either print it out on their printer or just, look at it online and show their builder or their architect. So that was very helpful. Let's see what else. Any other questions? I think I just have a few more. I don't know. Where are we with time too?
We have 12 minutes.
We have 12 minutes. Okay. Okay. So this was a piece we did for Yale World Fellows. This is an infographic on, the spread we're showing. It's open, but we also created this same spread. The reason I'm showing you this spread, it was printed on beautiful paper and all of that, but we also translated this into an interactive map online on their website. So you see it's static here. It looks very nice. You go online, the bubbles as you hover over get larger. Some statistics come up with numbers on there. You can zoom in. Some photographs can come up when you zoom in and more detailed information about different areas. So very, very interactive. And it started from us designing it as this print piece. And then the call to action was go to the website to interactively see this same infographic. So that was something you could think about too, online and offline, and directing one to the other. Babbage construction, so brochure, stationery, it's still really nice to get a print. We're going digital, so I know a lot of us probably haven't finished our box of letterhead, right? But it's still nice to get in the mail, on a nice sheet of paper where you see the Strathmore or whatever watermark on it, and it's printed and say it's an acceptance letter, or it's a thank you letter, thank you for the referral, handwritten note, note cards. Along with you could get some nice note cards that you could put in with your printed brochure, your pocket folder. When you do an RFP, nice cover letter. I know we respond mostly digitally, but it's still nice to get a printed thank you or a printed note or a printed piece, pocket folder brochure handed to you or in the mail. can't replace, they haven't figured out digitally how to replace that experience yet.
Right. And if it's not a bill, we love receiving it, right?
Yeah.
Anything that's not a bill in the mail.
It's digital, right? It's like we want to be paid right away. So you just digitally have your masthead up there. But if it comes in an envelope and it's that you think this is something special. I mean, aren't those the pieces of mail that we open first?
Yes.
Right? If I sent you an Elements note card and I hand wrote your name on there, you're going to toss the bills and the catalog and be like, what's this Amy sent me? And we know you're going to open it, right? I mean, that's a big bonus right there for getting through to your prospects. This was a piece we did I did a lot of work for the City of New Haven. This is the Town Green Special Services. And this was just a really nice printed piece that we did. It also happens to be a 10-year, we did the annual report every year for years, but this was a 10-year piece. It's got the beautiful rounded corners on it and all that. But what I really liked about it was how we handled, you see like the testimonials. We had some photography done and we went around town and we had different people talking. And it's great to throw in some sort of surprise, some sort of unexpected thing into either your digital or printed pieces. So maybe you do have a photographer go and take a picture of one of your clients to put in your piece next, their testimonial in your brochures, and you turn the page and then, there's someone there talking about you. That's just an example, but I'm just, giving an example of my message. My overall message is put something unexpected in there. Put in something that isn't always just the norm. I mean, get the basics covered, but it's nice to put in something that really shows your voice, your personality, who you are as a company, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking to feel a little bit closer to you, learn a little bit more. We've become such voyeurs, right? We go online, we check people out. Print can go a little deeper. It could tell me a little bit more about you that I can't find on a website. So, but you could do that in your digital brochure too. You can give them a little surprise, something that supports your business and what you're doing as a company. Maybe something a little bit about your culture, or an unusual project. Maybe something pro bono you guys did as a team. You walked in a fundraiser or something like that. Something nice, something that tells me a little bit more about you. So I think that's it. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if there's any other questions, or I hope this was helpful.
We had one.
Mm-hmm.
We had one that we didn't get to before. So if there are any other questions, feel free to start typing them in now.
Okay.
And the other question that we didn't get to was, what is a good length for narrative information on each page of a digital slide or web page?
What is the length?
Of the narrative.
Of the narrative. Digital's hard. Like I said, our attention is, all over. So I would make my point. So if I was writing copy for digital, I would first write out my whole point, which would be way too long. And then I would call it and edit, because it's like that. Pay attention to how you read online, and that will give you a good gauge too. I don't know that we actually pay attention and we skim, right? We look for words. I don't even know that we're aware. Most people aren't aware of it. I am as a designer. It's what I do, but I don't know that most people are aware of how we skim and we look for those keywords. So when you're writing, think of the words that will, catch people's attention. Pay very close attention to your subheads and things like that, because mostly what we do online is we're searching for some piece of information that we're looking for, which is different than our intention with print. So print and digital they're different platforms. They have different purposes. They act differently. And when we're online, we're behaving differently than we are with a printed piece. So I hope that answers the question. I can't hear you, Nicole. Where'd your sound go?
Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
My husband was making lunch, so I muted myself. Sorry.
Okay.
We have another question. What does the typical distribution channel look like? Direct mail to targeted client, not direct to passive.
Let me think about the question for a second. What does the typical distribution channel look like? Is there a typical distribution channel? Direct mail to targeted client, not direct and passive. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to answer it because maybe I don't understand your question correctly, but from what I'm understanding, you're talking about the tactics before you're talking about the goals of what you're trying to do. So I start with, what will this campaign do? Is this campaign going to my targeted audience, or am I trying to cast a bigger net and they may not all be my targeted audience, but I'm trying to reach a greater pool of people, I guess. That's how I'm reading. How are you reading it, Nicole? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know if he can, oh, here we go. Correct. Yep. He says that's how he meant it, is how you interpret it, Amy.
Okay. So I would sit down first and I would say, what are the goals with your marketing program? What is it you're trying to do? What's your wish list? Who are we trying to reach? What are the projects you want to get? And then I work backwards from there and try to come up with the tactics. Remember, I talked about stepping through the customer's journey. So we come up with the tactics that would reach that person. You're going to have more people in your pipeline if you do that omni-channel thing I was talking about. You're going to fill your pipeline better than if you so if I did just a direct mail piece to people, and then separately, not connected to the direct mail piece, I did an e-newsletter, and then not connected to the e-newsletter, I did a brochure, I'm not going to fill my pipeline or get as great of a response as if they were all interconnected with one another. So I hope that answered his question. If not, he can write back again. I hope that answered his question.
Great. And it looks like we're out of time for questions, but I just wanted to go back to the poll. And I don't know if anybody can see this because I think we were supposed to do it once it was done, but I'll just read the results. So the question for the poll was, what type of brochure, if any, does your firm have? And 25% of the attendees selected print version. Okay. 5% selected digital.
Okay.
61% selected both.
Okay, good.
And then there's an 8% that said neither. So it looks like the majority of the attendees are, having that symbiotic relationship and using both.
So my question for the 61% would be, are they connected? Are they supporting each other? And you don't want to just regurgitate the same information, right? You want to treat them individually, but they should be supporting each other and related. They should look branded together and that sort of thing. So I would take a look see if that's the case. To the 8%, I'd say get on it. And then I don't remember the numbers, but I like that the print was more than the digital to support my point that print isn't dead. Digital's come so far, but you just can't replace a printed brochure.
So true. Well, Amy, I want to thank you so much for your time today. We just want to thank again BBH Integrated Services for sponsoring, and then just want to let everybody know that we have some upcoming webinars on the 6th. On 6/10. So that's in 2 weeks. We have shortlist interviewing from surviving to thriving. And then on the 17th of June is our annual meeting, plus a webinar on prospering in a digital environment. And then 6/25 is our strategic planning retreat. So if you want to have a say in next year's SMPS initiatives, working off of our strategic plan, definitely it's free for all members to attend. It is going to be a virtual experience. Alicia is working very hard on that, so it should be something very good. And again, thank you to our annual sponsors. This webinar is recorded, and it will be available, the link will be available along with this presentation slide deck in a couple days. So again, thank you, Amy, and thank you all for attending, and have a wonderful day and stay healthy.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.